Dana Denha here, and this is Let's Watch with the Ann Arbor Film Festival. Every year, talented artists from all over the world aim to take part in our local film fest. Artists of all kinds unveil their passions and interests through film and performances at this internationally renowned annual event. Joining me is Bryan Konefsky, a filmmaker and juror for the 2019 Ann Arbor Film Festival. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Ann Arbor from New Mexico, right?
Thank you very much. It's wonderful to be here.
Well, why don't you tell me a little bit about your background and what sort of led you to the world of film?
Sure. It's interesting because I came to cinema in a very sort of circuitous kind of way. For years, I defined myself as a painter. So I was in the plastic arts and sort of struggling to find galleries in New York to be interested in my work. And I found it to be ultimately kind of a very disappointing and not very gratifying experience. What I found was that there was a lot of competition. And so people who I thought were my friends were the kind of activity they were involved with I describe as aesthetic ambulance chasing. So everybody's looking over their shoulder in competition, what's the latest,
Hidden
what's the
jealousies,
hottest,
yeah.
all that sort of stuff. And so in the 70s actually, when I was an undergraduate, I took a couple classes in film history classes, which I loved, and a couple production classes. There was one in particular, a video art class, with this wild sort of Doctor Who kind of character, Shalom Garowitz, who's got a bit of a name for himself in New York as an early practitioner of video art. And but I forgot about it for some time because the equipment was so expensive. And so many people said, well, if you're going to be a real artist, you know, you're a painter, you're a sculptor. And
everyone's a multimedia artist these days.
It's true. It's true. And I love the way that those boundaries and those territories have just been thrown away, or they're so permeable. So I moved to New Mexico in 1991 for grad school. And as a painter in the MFA program there. And within a couple months, I met Gene Youngblood, who is the author of a very famous publication called Expanded Cinema. It's kind of the Bible of film experimentalists. And I met Woody and Stena Vasulka, who had started a place in an outfit in New York called the Kitchen Center for Performing Arts. People like Laurie Anderson were part of that scene, and people like Namjoon Paik, the Korean video artist. And I remembered, wow, I really loved the moving image, but it was too expensive and such. And they just reignited that passion, sold all my paintbrushes,
wow, you really went all in.
And bought cameras. But having a background in the plastic arts, I refer to these different cameras that I have, whether it's an 8mm, 16mm, pixel vision camera, digital camera, old analog VHS camera. I've got them all. And I refer to them as my palette of cameras.
Nice.
So still sort of a reference back to the painting that I was interested in. And famously, infamously, I'm the first MFA student at the University of New Mexico to graduate doing moving image artwork.
Wow.
And then they hired me on as a teacher. I don't know why, because I never studied the moving image. So it was a lot of on-the-job training.
All right, well, why don't we check out one of your works here to start out. Now we've been introduced to Bryan. Let's watch Miss Yummy Yummy. We're back with Bryan Konefsky, and you were just telling us about yourself, and then we kind of saw one of your first films that you gave to me, Miss Yummy Yummy. Why don't you tell me the inspiration behind Miss Yummy Yummy? Because that was shot in Germany, right?
It was shot in Würzburg, Germany.
Yeah.
And I had a wonderful opportunity. I was invited by a colleague of mine, Ingo Petsky, who teaches at the University of Applied Sciences there. And he asked me to come out as an artist in residence. So I was there for a couple weeks, interacting with the students, giving some talks, showing some of my films. I do travel a lot. And when I travel, I usually shoot. And often the shooting isn't with any rhyme or reason. So I have this archive, I collect this archive of images, hoping to maybe make something at some point. And so with Miss Yummy Yummy, it was interesting. I'm wandering around the town. It's a small town. And there was a department store with this big mural of Miss Yummy Yummy, this gal in a bathing suit and this like a beauty pageant kind of.
Very pin-up-y, like 1950s pin-up, yeah.
Very much so. And I was like confused but intrigued. Nobody knew anything about her. Everybody was ignoring this image that really dominated the main street. And I thought, well, you know, I need to do something here. So I started by I was just shooting around town. There were some interesting trolleys and trains and some of the pedestrians. And then my camera found its way to Miss Yummy Yummy. And as I was shooting that mural, I realized people really were quite literally ignoring. They were more interested in their ice cream cones. They were more interested in catching the bus. And there's a very famous movie made by Bruce Conner called Marilyn x5, an experimental film.
Okay.
And it takes very early images of Marilyn Monroe in this nude, cheesecakey sort of soft porn kind of thing that she was involved with at the time. And he repeated the image over and over and over again, hence the title. And the idea was exploring the image to see if indeed there was any meaning inside of that photograph, that moving photograph, or not. What kind of meaning or absence of meaning might there be? So that was the inspiration. It's my Miss Yummy Yummy is not about that, but that kind of inspired it. And so in some ways it's a travel diary. In some ways it's an homage to Bruce Conner. And in some ways just sort of a big question mark, like, why?
Did you ever find out what the story was behind her?
Never. Nobody, Ingo didn't know, nobody knew. So.
I really like the one shot that was sort of like a juxtaposition between Miss Yummy Yummy and then the average woman who's just like looking at you like, why are you shooting me right now?
She wasn't too happy about that. Generally, when I shoot in public, I'm very conscious of that, and I'll let people know that I'm shooting. And often I also shoot street performers, and I'll give them money and make sure that everything is kosher. But in her case, I didn't think she really saw me, and then all of a sudden she shot me this look. I was like, ooh.
Oh yeah, I've seen that look before because people sometimes don't like to be on camera.
And that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
But you were just shooting the beauty behind her of Miss Yummy Yummy.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we check out another one of your works?
Sure.
Music and sound play a significant role in Bryan's work, and that is evident in Does Anyone Ever Really Quit?
Yogi Bear is smarter than the average bear. 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 Yogi Bear is always in the ranger's hair. At a picnic table you will find him there, stopping down more goodies than the average bear.
Does anyone ever quit, Yogi?
All right, we're back. We're here with Bryan, and we watched Does Anyone Ever Really Quit? So, first of all, my first thought when watching this was, well, two things. I love the cartoon Yogi Bear. I was always a fan, so it had a place in my heart for that. But also, the strange thing was this bear in captivity situations, because I remember actually when I was in college, one of my girlfriends went to Central Michigan University, and there was this whole thing where people were protesting this bear that was in captivity like that at a park.
Right.
Yeah. So what's the story with this bear?
There's a backstory to this. So I'd mentioned that that I had studied painting back on the East Coast and such, and I, as an undergraduate, did not study film, but I would often go up to New Haven, and some of the Yale students would put on these film presentations and such, and one of them really struck me. It was my first what's called expanded cinema performance. So there's a projection, and then there's some kind of live performance in conjunction with it. And so in this case, the filmmakers had a lockdown shot of a polar bear in, well, then they were cages. They weren't environments. Maybe the environments are a little bit better. We'll leave that. And so the cage, there was the cage, you could see the bear, and then there was a cement wall on either side. And the bear was, well, out of its mind. And so the bear would just go back and forth and back and forth. Every time it would reach the cement wall on either side, it would make contact. It would slam its head. And the performance, the live performance component of it, was a percussionist on stage, and they would hit a cymbal every time. And it was kind of a simple performance, but I'd never seen anything like that before, and it really resonated with me. Well, years later, or I should say, the film, Does Anybody Ever Quit?, was shot in Bridgeport, Connecticut, which is my adopted hometown. Kind of a mini Detroit, in that it had its industrial moment during World War II, and the economy has pretty much gone downhill ever since. But a really interesting history. Buckminster Fuller lived there for a time. That's where he designed his Dymaxium automobile. And P.T. Barnum, the circus guy, was the mayor of the town for a time. And so I shot my film at the Beardsley Zoo, which had been the location where Barnum and his colleagues would exercise their animals. And then it became the zoo. So I do a fair amount of work about Bridgeport. It's still fascinating for me, even though I haven't lived there for some time. So I go to the zoo, and here's Joaquin the black bear just going in circles, just going in circles. And I instantly thought of that polar bear and the Yale student performance. So I thought I would, without saying it explicitly, create a little homage to that. That film that I had seen. So I'm shooting it, and Joaquin is spinning and spinning and spinning, and so some of this, well, not really cinematography, but the post-production where I would zoom in and out of the bear was to sort of amplify his situation. And
Which
then
is already a sad situation to begin with.
It was. And then the audio actually came from where, let's see, so there was Yogi Bear, and who was his?
Boo Boo.
Boo Boo, right. And so it was a cigarette I'm sorry, it was an anti-cigarette campaign.
Okay, so that's where the quitting aspect comes from.
Exactly, so it was about quitting cigarettes, but I pulled that bit of audio, and I thought that it might, in some ways, intersect with Joaquin's situation.
Bryan finds beauty and despair in his work. Come on down to the nitty-gritty.
See that band all dressed in white. God is going to trouble these waters. It looked like a band of the Israelites. God is going to trouble these waters. Wading in the water. Wading in the water, children. Wading in the water. God is going to trouble these waters. See that band all dressed in red. God is going to trouble these waters. It looked like a band that Moses led. God is going to trouble these waters.
You love me later. I said, come on back to me. I really need you so. Help me out, buddy. Please, please, lady. Help me out, darling. I said, come on home to me. Come on home to me. I want to get down on my knees and pray to the good Lord above. I said, can you help me, please? Help me out, Mister, please. Please. I want to get down on my knees. I want to say a prayer too. Can y'all give us something, please? Please. I want to get down on my knees and say a little prayer for you. Come on down to the good Lord. Come on down to the good Lord above. I want to pray to the Lord that something gonna happen. I said, come on down to the real nitty-gritty. Good morning. Can you help me this morning, please? All right, thanks. I want to get down on my knees. I want to say a prayer too. I said, come on down on my knees. I want to say a prayer. Can you help me with $1? Can you help me with $1? Mister, can you help me out a little bit, please? Mister, good morning, man. Can you help me out a little bit, please? I said, can you help me, please? Can you help me out a little bit? Good morning. Can you give us something today, please? Can you help me out a little bit? I said, come on down. I said, come on down. Come on down. Help me out there, buddy. Please. I appreciate it, man.
I'm here with Bryan Konefsky, self-proclaimed undependent experimental media artist. So I stole that from your website, so that's
Perfect.
your title there. So I think in this one we see it's like about homelessness and panhandling and stuff, and I kind of felt like the invisibility of the homeless person. Am I right?
Yeah. This is my newest film, just completed a short time ago with a wonderful new collaborator, Nina Schoenfeld, who's a composer, and so she did most of the sound design. And this film, before I was talking about how I shoot often when I travel, and then I end up with this archive of imagery that maybe I'll use at some point in the future. Well, the second panhandler that we see in the shot between the two boats, that was shot in Würzburg, Germany, when I was doing that artist in residence program. The boats, so that was back in what says in the credits, in 2005, 8, whatever it was.
Something like that, yeah.
And the boats on either side were shot in Karlsruhe, Germany, when I was visiting the ZKM Media Museum, this incredible media museum that goes right back to the beginning of moving image, and it's just incredible. I was interviewing the director of the museum for a documentary project that I'm working on. And then the first panhandler who we see, I shot in Washington, D.C. None of those images had anything to do with each other in terms of, I didn't think that they were going to necessarily be part of the same project. I just found them interesting. And in particular, the panhandler in Washington is a great example. I think I gave him $50 and asked him, is it okay? I'd like to record you singing. And he said, singing? I'm just panhandling here. He didn't see himself as a performer, and I really saw him as that. And so I was showing Nina some of these different images that I had, and she was like, hey, this, the empty boats, I think you got something here. And so she started crafting some sound design for it, and we put something together. It's a much more somber work than some of my other pieces, but then again, maybe it's a reflection of the times.
Yeah, and like you said, yeah, it is one of your newer works, so that would make complete sense.
Yeah.
Well, before we go, I'd really like to talk
Sure.
to you about your job, because this is the first time I've had a juror for the Ann Arbor Film Festival in studio. So what is the job of a juror, and how are you chosen?
Well, I don't know how we're chosen, but so that I can't answer.
Well,
However,
you just must have made a great name for yourself, that's why.
I gotta say, it's such a huge honor that the folks at the Ann Arbor Film Festival asked me to be a judge. I just can't say enough about that. And the two women who I'm judging with, Stacy Steers and Adama Akuso, the three of us just get along so well. We're having so much fun. Maybe we're having more fun than we should. But the job is we have to watch all the films, and there's 20 plus very specific awards that are given, and so we have to navigate our way around all of these different incredible films and come up with works that fit into these different categories. So we're taking notes, and every night we meet and we...
So you three are really deciding all the awards that are given out, and then when the festival travels, those are the ones that travel with the festival as they go from place to place.
That's right. And then Sunday, so we give Leslie Raymond, the director of the festival, our decisions Sunday morning, and then Sunday afternoon, I think they do 2 shows of the award winners. And
Nice.
so, and there's a lot of money involved, and
It's quite an honor, but I am going to have to stop you right there because we are out of time, Bryan.
that's
so
okay.
It was great chatting with you.
You too.
For more on this and other CTN series, visit a2gov.org/watchctn and check out our full lineup at youtube.com/CTN Ann Arbor. And remember to like, comment, and share. I'm Dana Denhofer. Let's watch with the Ann Arbor Film Festival.